Speaking of screwed, New Republic, Trump desperately tries to blame anyone but himself for inflation. Now, I want to be fair here, and I actually do. It's been less than a month. The economy's a big ship. It does not turn on a dime. It cannot turn on a dime. Nothing Trump was going to do was going to have a meaningful change on the rate of inflation that we measure in February from the economy experienced in January.
Right.
It's literally not possible.
Yeah.
But the reason it's still important to talk about is he fucking said he would.
Yeah.
He came out and told everybody, day one, his words, day one, we will start lowering your prices. Day one, we will start fixing this problem. Well, bitch, it's been more than day one.
Yeah.
And ain't nothing fixed.
Well, and to be honest, I don't really care whether it matters whether or not this is his problem, because it is his problem in general because he's in the big seat. And there's never been a moment of reflection on the other side when something is happening, let's say gas prices, for instance, which are globally controlled, right?
Right.
Those things go up here and then they blame Biden. They drive around and put little stickers on everything to say, I did that on the pumps. So they don't care when there's clearly something that's happening that is out of control of the presidency. They don't give a shit. Well, guess what? I don't either. So it's his fucking problem. He's the one in office right now. He came out and called it Biden's inflation. And you're like, well, no, you're the one in the office. So
cheers now, dummy.
And you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe technically he's right, but I don't even care. I'm just like, no, man, it's yours. Like, it's 100% yours. You own this. You're in the spot. Right now, it's yours.
You know, there's a weird thing that happened. I don't know if you've encountered this, Cecil, but like when I've talked to people about inflation, when I've talked to people about like kind of what happened and what the root causes of it were, beyond the fact that like most people don't really have a good grasp of basic like macroeconomic theory, but like they just don't, and that's fine because like
look,
why
I go to the coffee shop and I try to talk about basic macroeconomic theory, and nobody knows anything anymore.
The barista just says, "Take your coffee and leave." But like when I'm talking to these fucking people, what I hear is people talk about, you know, they gave away all that money in those stimulus checks. Oh, they gave away all that money in those stimulus checks. Oh, that was really the problem. They gave away all that money in those stimulus checks. And then I'm like, hey, man, you know, Trump gave away a lot of those stimulus checks, right? Like he signed them. He insisted, if you'll recall, those checks went out and he insisted on making sure that those checks had his fucking signature on it. Do you remember that shit?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that most of the stimulus checks went out under the Trump administration. I think more went out under the Biden administration than the Trump administration. But the Trump administration began that. He signed them. He insisted his signature be on them. We're doing this thing where we're like rewriting history. We're deciding that things happened. Like where people blame Biden for the lockdowns.
Yeah.
The lockdowns were over before Biden ever took office. The lockdowns happened exclusively 100% under Trump.
Yeah.
But America's blamed, and I don't understand this. They've blamed the lockdowns, the people who hate it, on Biden. He wasn't even fucking in charge.
Yeah.
They blamed the stimulus checks on Biden. The Trump administration sent out the first several batches of those with his fucking signature on them.
Sure.
What is happening? What the fuck is even happening? Oh, it's Biden's inflation. Like, what?
Well,
how?
Well, and then there's just a misunderstanding of scale. So like on the No Rogan Experience, the podcast I did with Michael Marshall, it'll release, this releases on Monday for the wide audience. On Tuesday, the show that we did covering this USAID stuff will release. And this USAID stuff, you hear Joe saying, you wonder why our, he's talking about all this waste that's happening in USAID. And he's like, you wonder, why our deficit is so big. He's like, this USAID stuff. USAID was a $40 billion a year budget. Our deficit is like $37 trillion. Marsh did the math. He's like, it would be 900 years for you to fill the deficit if it was just USAID and that was only a deficit every year. So, it's just a misunderstanding of scale and a misunderstanding of how things working. And like people don't, I think that they don't want to know. They just want to be mad about it.
Yeah.
I think that's the real key.
It's just the whole thing is just fucking wild. And the rewriting of history and the intentional misunderstanding of how numbers work.
Yeah.
It's funny because like they did the same thing to Obama where they blamed the housing crash
Yeah.
of 2008 on Obama.
It's like he wasn't in office.
And like, yeah.
He wasn't in office yet. Bush wrote that check.
Right.
Yeah.
Like all the bailouts were under Bush. Like that's that was.
I mean, Bush
he
was a
cleaned it.
lame duck. I mean, like he had already lost because I remember Obama was in some of those talks too. But Bush was the one who did it.
Yeah, that happened under his watch. 2008 was fully under George W. Bush. That's how that works. January is the next year, 2009.
Yeah.
But we have this weird history, this weird like fucking fuck up of history. And I do wonder, Cecil, if part of it is because of our election cycle. So, for example, we think of the 2020 election and we think, oh, well, who won the 2020 election? Oh, well, Joe Biden won the 2020 election.
Must
So
have
Joe
been him.
Biden was in charge in 2020.
Yeah. He was in
Right?
charge in 2021.
But
yeah.
he wasn't because he doesn't
Yeah.
take office till 2021.
Yeah.
I think the same feels true of like, oh, well, like obviously we had, if you're bad at math and you're bad at history, you'd be like, oh yeah, well obviously the Obama years were 2008 because that's when he was elected. You're like, well, no, he's elected in 2008, but he started office, of course, in January of 2009.
Yeah.
But I think it's part of that maybe, and part of it just better branding by the Republicans.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think it's also, genuinely you're motivated to put the bad stuff on the people you don't like. And so I think that's often something that happens too.